Russia looked east in the late 1500s. Siberia was a giant, mysterious land. It stretched far, for thousands of miles. Taking it would take 200 years. This was a big step for Russia. The country was growing fast. Siberia promised wealth and new territory. It was an irresistible pull for the ambitious Tsarist state, a new frontier waiting to be claimed. Who were the key players in this monumental push? The Tsars in Moscow, the rulers of Russia, gave the orders. They wanted a bigger, more powerful empire. Rich merchants, particularly the Stroganov family, paid for many early trips. They saw huge profits in Siberian furs. Then there were the Cossacks. These tough, adventurous frontiersmen formed the spearhead. They were brave and skilled fighters, used to harsh conditions and ready for anything. Why did Russia want Siberia so badly? Furs were the main, overwhelming reason. People at the time called them soft gold. Sable, fox and ermine furs were incredibly valuable. All of Europe craved these luxury goods, but the Tsars also wanted more land. More land meant more subjects, more resources, and more international prestige. Spreading their Orthodox Christian faith was another, though often secondary, motivation for some involved in the expansion. Yermak Timofeyevich led a famous early expedition that truly began the conquest. He was a charismatic Cossack leader, an ataman. The wealthy Stroganovs backed his venture with supplies and men. In 1581, Yermak's determined band of Cossacks marched into Siberia. They directly challenged the authority of the Khanate of Siberia. In 1582, they defeated its ruler, Kuchum Khan, in a decisive battle. This victory was absolutely key. It effectively broke the Khanate and opened the vast Siberian territories to further Russian advances. After Yermak's initial breakthrough, more Russians pushed steadily eastwards. The conquest of Siberia was a slow, piecemeal process. It was not achieved through one single swift war. Instead, small groups of explorers and soldiers moved forward, bit by bit. They primarily followed Siberia's great, sprawling rivers. These rivers acted as natural highways through the wilderness. The land was incredibly harsh. The Siberian winters were notoriously brutal and long, but the determined Russians kept on coming, drawn by the promise of riches. The Russians built numerous wooden forts which they called. These forts were critically important to their strategy. They were like stepping stones, marking Russian progress across the vastness of Siberia. Ostrogs served as vital army bases protecting Russian interests. They were also crucial trading posts. Furs were bought, sold, and collected there. Many of these eventually grew into significant towns like Tobolsk, Tomsk, and Yakutsk. These forts helped Russia to establish and maintain control over the land. Siberia's big river systems were essential for the Russians' travel and expansion. The Oby, the Yenisei, and the Lena were particularly vital arteries. These mighty rivers flowed through the huge, dense forests, known as the taiga. Cossacks and fur trappers, used small, sturdy boats in the summer months. When winter came, they used sledges on the frozen rivers. These river routes helped them to explore deeper and deeper. They continually searched for new areas rich in valuable fur-bearing animals. A key element of Russian control was making local people pay. This was a form of tribute, or tax, usually paid in furs. The very best and most valuable furs were demanded for the Tsar's treasury. This system ensured a constant flow of wealth back to Moscow. It also served as a clear demonstration of Russian power and dominance. Indigenous groups were compelled to comply. It was a fundamental tool of colonial control. It was absolutely central to Russia's plan for exploiting Siberia. The relentless Russian push to the east never really stopped throughout the 17th century. Russian explorers and adventurers were incredibly determined. Their ultimate ambitious goal was to reach the very eastern edge of the Asian continent. This incredible journey meant crossing thousands of miles of challenging and often hostile terrain. They faced seemingly endless dense forests, towering mountain ranges and vast frozen plains. Their grand prize was the Pacific Ocean, often called the Great Eastern Ocean. In the year 1639, Russian explorers finally saw the Pacific Ocean. A group led by a Cossack named Ivan Moskvitin made it all the way. They reached the cold, wind-swept shores of the Sea of Okhotsk. This was a truly massive achievement for the time. It signified that Russia now touched a new, vast ocean. Other explorers soon followed in Moskvitin's wake. Men like Vasily Poyarkov and Yerofey Khabarov explored the Amur River basin. This important region brought them into contact and sometimes conflict with China. As the Russians ventured further into the Far East and north of Siberia, some local tribes fought back very hard. The Chukchi people, for instance, lived in the extremely harsh and remote northeast. They were known as fierce and skilled warriors. Their ancestral land was frozen and difficult to access. It proved very hard for Russia to establish firm control over them. These conflicts in the far northeast would continue for many decades. Other indigenous groups, however, engaged in trade more peacefully with the newcomers. Russia's eastward expansion eventually led to direct contact with neighboring China. The Chinese Empire, then under the Qing dynasty, was a powerful and sophisticated state. It bordered the newly claimed Siberian lands to the south. Some armed clashes occurred along the Amur River Valley. Both empires wanted to assert their influence in this strategic area. To prevent a larger war, officials from both sides decided to talk. In 1689, they signed the important Treaty of Nerchinsk. This treaty established the first formal border between Russia and China in the region.